Stop government funding. No more AFL-CIO supported crews.
My name is Steve Zeltzer. I'm a member of the Pacific and Median Workers Guild and also a member of the Labor Education Project in AFL-CIO and United Front Committee for Labor Party. And today is September 11th, 2023, and the United States is talking about the attack on 9/11 and the destruction, the cost of lives in the United States. However, the U.S. government and unfortunately the AFL-CIO, which we're in front of today, was responsible for another 9/11, and that was in Chile on 1973, September the 11th, 1973. And we're here today to demand that the AFL-CIO be held accountable. People talk about accountability. Well, when you're involved in murder and coups and using U.S. funds in the name of the AFL-CIO, you have a responsibility to come clean. And that's why we're having this press conference today in front of the AFL-CIO, because despite the fact government records have been released that the United States was directly involved, Kissinger, in overthrowing the government in Chile, doing the coup, the AFL-CIO is completely silent. In fact, their Solidarity Center has no information about what happened in Chile. This is the AFL-CIO government funding Solidarity Center, which got $75 million from the National Endowment For Democracy. Now, when you look at democracy, people talk about democracy. Is the United States bringing democracy to the rest of the world? I doubt it. What the United States is bringing is 800 bases around the world. What the United States is bringing drones and dropping of bombs on people all over the world. What the United States is bringing the IMF and the World Bank and privatization, austerity, deregulation, and union busting. That's what the United States is bringing. And in Chile, and we'll hear about that today, the coup supported by the United States and the AFL-CIO has brought not just misery and death of tens of thousands in 1973, but today, yesterday there was a rally at the cemetery where Salvador Allende was buried, and the government of Chile had troops there to prevent them from even having a commemoration of the deaths of people in Chile. Is this democracy? Unions are under severe restriction. They privatize the health care, they privatize Social Security, they've looted the pension plans, and the United States is silent about it, and the AFL-CIO and Liz Schuler, who's president. And we're going to be delivering a letter later to the AFL-CIO calling on them to be held accountable to compensate the victims in Chile of their deaths, for the murders, and also to end this subsidy from the United States government for their international operations. I doubt the United States would be giving $75 million to the AFL-CIO if it was fighting multinationals in Mexico and around the world. That is not part of their agenda. So our first speaker is going to be Carol Lang, and she is a delegate to Professional Staff Congress, CUNY, in New York, and has been active in fighting for real international labor solidarity. Welcome, Carol.
Hi, I was wondering how to prepare for such an event, but there's no way to prepare for the fact that 35,000 people and counting have been murdered by the Chilean Pinochet government with the endorsement of the AFL-CIO. Had the AFL-CIO not participated in this coup, this would not have happened. The fact is the AFL-CIO has basically helped to organize the overthrow of socialist and leftist governments around the world. Not just in Chile, we're talking about in Guatemala, we're talking about in Brazil, we're talking about in Argentina. These are our fellow human beings. These are our fellow workers. And without the support and the endorsement of the AFL, which takes millions of dollars in dues from workers who believe that we are doing good things for people around the world, that we are using that money to fight for the rights of American workers, when in fact that money is going to overthrow, leftist governments all around the world. The situation will continue to decline. The environment will continue to decline. Wars that are impending on between the United States and China will probably end up happening. The United States and Russia will probably happen with the endorsement of the AFL-CIO. The AFL-CIO has already endorsed Biden who's talking about nuclear war. Biden, who sends nuclear depleted uranium to Ukraine, who sends billions of dollars of weaponry so that the defense company can make billions of dollars while hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian and Russian workers are dying because for the sake of U.S. capitalism. Where is the AFL on this? The AFL has said nothing about it. In fact, the AFL has supported the murderer, Joseph Biden, who will continue to degrade the planet, will continue to participate in wars that will murder millions of people. And so we in the PIO believe that the AFL leadership has to be pushed out. That we need a leadership that's willing to defend workers, a leadership that's willing to defend workers not here, only here, but around the world. And the only way that's going to happen is when the AFL leadership changes and when we have a leadership that's willing to unite workers all around the world to fight for a society that's based on common needs, common demands, on socialism, and that will never happen because these people make millions of dollars a year. They're not willing to give up their position because if they give up their position, they materially will lose so much money. And therefore, we are hoping to create a mass movement, and we think that is just on the horizon, given the conditions of American capitalism and the inevitability of depression and war. And once that happens, we need to develop a different kind of leadership that's really going to move the working class forward in the United States and internationally, because we don't have problems with workers in Russia. We don't have problems with workers in China. We have problems with our capitalist country. We have problems with our union leadership, and that's going to have to change if the world is not going to ultimately become extinct.
The PIO is the only organization that is organized around educating American workers around the world, the AFL-CIO internationally. The AFL-CIO has operations through the Solidarity Center in 62 countries around the world. Today is the anniversary of the coup in Chile, but you're not going to hear a word from the Solidarity Center. Why is that? The Solidarity Center says it's for international solidarity. Why are they silent today on September the 11th on what the AFL-CIO did in Chile? And the reason is they were complicit, and it involves the history of the AFL-CIO and the CIA. They were intimately involved in the CIA. They were also intimately involved in a CIA AFL-CIO attack on the Ford Assembly plant in Mexico on January 8th, 1990. Which 300 gangsters attacked the Ford Assembly plant in Mexico City and injured many workers and killed Ford Assembly worker Cleto. And this coming January 8th, we'll be in Mexico City to commemorate that because American workers do remember what happened in Mexico City. American workers remember what happened in Chile. So our next speaker is going to be James Jordan, who's with the Alliance for Global Justice. They are also involved in education, and James just returned from Colombia, where there was a long encampment outside the U.S. Embassy, General Motors, to demand justice for GM injured workers. So welcome, James.
Hi, well, it's really good to be here, and I'm glad that we're gathered here, I think, to mark this occasion, to mark this historic anniversary. But also, our being here is itself historic. It's historic when even a few people stand up and talk about what has been done, what has been going on in the name of labor, and the fact that international relations for U.S. labor, for the AFL-CIO, are not in the hands of workers. They're not only not funded by workers, I mean, the Solidarity Center, as you know, is 95% funded by the U.S. government. But not only is Solidarity Center not funded by workers, workers really have no say or no knowledge about the details of what it does. The policies, the relations are not set with input from workers. I urge anyone to just undertake the confusing, the full of pitfalls labor of trying to research what the Solidarity Center does. Just look into what it's been doing in Venezuela. It gets thousands, millions of dollars for work in Venezuela, but nobody knows what they're doing there. You can't find anything about it. No details in the NED website, no details in the Solidarity Center website. The latest information they have about Venezuela is from like 2014. But what is going on is the Solidarity Center, the U.S. government, is spending lots and lots and lots of money on humanitarian aid to help Venezuelan migrant workers who've been displaced, who've had to leave because of the sanctions and the blockade imposed by the U.S. government. The Bogota office in Colombia is responsible for operations in both Colombia and in Venezuela. And I just want to say that I think this is one of the bases of the Solidarity Center today. There is a real emphasis on helping Venezuelan migrant workers in other countries, in our allied countries. And one might consider this to be humanitarian aid, to be a good thing to help people who are in trouble. But that's not what it is at all. It is part and parcel of the blockade and the sanctions against Venezuela, against Cuba, against Nicaragua, against other countries throughout the hemisphere. It is taking care of the excess displacement in order to keep these blockades, this cruel regime of sanctions and blockades in place against the Venezuelan people, in place against Cuba. So what I'm saying is the Solidarity Center does a lot in the shadows, But even when it is doing so-called good work, there's a price to pay. The good work of supporting Venezuelan migrant workers is the work of maintaining the sanctions and the blockades. The Solidarity Center, the AFL-CIO, workers everywhere should be leading the fight against these blockades, against these sanctions, rather than ameliorating. But it's more than that. It's more than that. Right now, the Solidarity Center is getting unprecedented funding from the Department of Labor. USAID, the State Department, have agreed to a program of investing $120 to $130 million in a new program called Empower. And it is through this program, for instance, that the Department of Labor has given $12 million for Solidarity Center activities in Brazil, Colombia, and Peru, and $10 million for activities in Mexico. So what this represents, this Empower, is the U.S. government, Argentina, South Africa, COSATU Union, Spain, Germany, I believe there's one other country, Canada, together are investing all of this money into labor, and it's the same story again. It is to support the right to organize, to say. It is also to support political advocacy and development of labor unions. Well, what kind of political advocacy is going to be dictated by the White House, by the State Department, by USAID? We know what kind. We're here today not celebrating, but marking the 50th anniversary of what is typical of what the U.S. government does with the collusion of labor to undermine democracy, not to support it. So this is something we really need to be paying attention to in the next years, is that Empower and what is happening through the Solidarity Center again. But above all, we just need to bring what's happening into the light. The Solidarity Center and the AFL-CIO need to open their books on their activities past, present, and future, and we need to pay attention to this new huge and unprecedented influx of cash into labor coming through this Empower system. Thank you.
Thank you, James. And when we talk about money, there are a lot of people in the United States who are angry about the fact that trillions of dollars are going to military warfare around the world. In fact, the Biden administration announced that they're going to give $1 billion more to Ukraine. Now, I don't know where they're getting $1 billion more for Ukraine. Was there a vote in Congress to provide another $1 billion to Ukraine? but apparently they don't have $1 billion for the people of Hawaii who've been wiped out in Maui. What kind of crap is this? The United States Biden administration is going to give $1 billion to Ukraine, but they can't take care of the people of Hawaii? Why is that? And I believe, and we believe, that because the United States government, the CIA, and the AFL-CIO, which supports the foreign policy of the United States government, are actually in favor of multinationals, the interests of U.S. multinationals around the world. That has been the role of the AFL-CIO when they support dictatorships. We also should recall there was just a coup in Peru. There was a coup in Bolivia. Where was the Solidarity Center protecting the democratic rights of workers in Peru and Bolivia? Completely silent. That is criminal. That's a cover-up. And we're demanding accountability. We're demanding that this AFL-CIO open its books so people can know where the millions and millions of dollars that are going. And in Chile, they spent $40 million, which is a lot of money in 1973, to overthrow the government. Our next speaker is Lou Wolf. He's a longtime activist for international solidarity, and he's with the Covert Action Group, which has covered a lot of the role of the AFL-CIO and the CIA. Welcome, Lou.
50 years ago today, some 35 to more thousand people were butchered in Santiago, Chile, in a coup when they were led into the famous soccer stadium there. And people nearby heard boom, 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 boom. They were all butchered there, as well as being tortured in the basement of the stadium. Now, this was by design. When Henry Kissinger said his own words, "Make the economy scream" in Chile. Just think about that, please. And here's a man who's 100 years old today who doesn't know the meaning of an apology or any sense of truth. He stands very tall for everything he did, not only against Chile, but in Vietnam, in Laos, where I have lived and worked, in the Philippines, and the list is very long, in some 40 or 50 countries where he applied his stewardship. Let me say here that in our magazine, which was founded 44 years ago, we're still publishing. Our website is covertactionmagazine.com. We interviewed a man, his name is Fred Landis. Fred Landis, still living today, worked for was a staff member of the Church Committee, the Senate and House Intelligence Committee, which was known as the Church Committee, under the leadership of Senator Frank Church. Fred Landis lived in Chile during the coup. In fact, he was a very major analyst and expert on the coup operations and on the media operations in Chile. In particular, he studied for years El Mercurio, which was the CIA-supported newspaper, daily newspaper in Chile, still today in Chile. When he left Chile, he managed to walk away with, I think, hundreds of copies of El Mercurio, and he wrote a lot about it. And part of what he documented was the fact that over the years of the Allende government, only 3 times during that period was Salvador Allende's photograph shown in El Mercurio. That was motivated by the CIA and by the Chilean fascists that came to power to pretend or to create a void around Salvador Allende, where his image could not be seen by the people who voted for him in a democratic election. How evil is that? It was not only in Chile with El Mercurio, in Jamaica. There's a newspaper there then and today called the Daily Gleaner. But in the case of El Mercurio and the Daily Gleaner, the CIA actually had a staff of people based first in Santiago, Chile, in the headquarters, in the very building of El Mercurio. My understanding is that they had at least 2 floors was reserved for all CIA people. These were technicians, these were propaganda specialists. Well, the same thing was done in Jamaica, where the government of Michael Manley was also overthrown. He died of a natural cause, but he was overthrown also. And the point, when we talk about the CIA, we must understand that the CIA, and I've studied them a lot from outside, of course, they do the same thing over and over and over and over. Now, it's not the same in each place. They conduct a coup in each country, but they integrate data from what's on the ground, what's happening at that moment. But their methodology is the same nearly every single time. But the CIA is known for allegedly only collecting intelligence. Well, let me inform you, if you didn't know it, that the CIA is a killing agency. And that's what they specialize in. Death squads, military coup operations, and to say nothing of the fact that they are involved in the United States. Guess what? By their charter, they are prohibited from conducting operations in the United States of America. They conduct media operations here in Washington and throughout this country. What they are allowed to do is to recruit young people from colleges and universities. That's supposed to be it. But they're still involved in media operations in the United States. The last thing I'll say is that the fact that the CIA gets billions of dollars, in fact their budget is secret. I mean, even the FBI budget is a public figure. Why is it the CIA is allowed to keep its budget secret? And that's because Congress, most members of Congress are very friendly with the CIA, very supportive of the CIA. And the very fact that in the Washington Post, there was an editorial supporting the coup in Chile at the time it happened. And there's an article in the Post today, on the back page of the Washington Post, which shows a photograph of Salvador Allende's body being carried out from the La Moneda Palace, which was bombed by British Harrier planes. What I'm saying here is that the Washington Post is an accomplice to coups whenever they happen.
Actions today on the anniversary of the coup, and they're joining us in front of the AFL-CIO today from Chile to talk about what's going on in Chile today on the 50th anniversary of the Chile coup, and also what responsibility the AFL-CIO has for that. So the first speaker is Lisa Milo, who is a member of the CWA UPD at UCSF and an interpreter. Welcome, Lisa.
Elizabeth Milo, reporting from Santiago de Chile. And I am a member of LEPAYO, and I'm here with members of the Committee in Defense of the Rights, Human Rights and Trade Union Rights, the AIFLD. And we have participated today in the ceremony honoring Salvador Allende at the La Moneda, together with other trade unions and organizations of the disappeared and organizations of families of disappeared. I want to state that this rally is of utmost importance because nowhere in Chile today, in all of the panel discussions that I have been at, of course I haven't been to all of them, but in all of them where I have been, including at very areas such as the book fairs and things like that, no one has mentioned the role of the AFL-CIO. It's interesting that now that these documents have been declassified, which shows a very direct relationship between Agustin Edwards, which was the owner of the oligarch newspaper in Mercurio, the right-wing newspaper that helped to create disinformation among the Chilean people. met with Kissinger and he met with Richard Helm and the CIA as well as with Nixon even before Allende took power, took office, and insisting that they not allow Allende to take office. So the plan was set in motion before Allende took office. But the other thing that's very interesting is the role of the AFL-CIO even before Allende was elected president. As a result of many of the research done by members of LePayo and other labor researchers that have come to light, is that the AFL-CIO to the AIFLD actually trained thousands of Chilean unionists during the 60s, part of the American Congress and as part of the American Institute for Labor Development, which was formed by the AFL-CIO as a way to counteract the trend towards socialism in the developing countries, and in particular in Chile. Few people realize that Allende tried to become president 4 times before, and the U.S. government and the AIFLD played an important role in trying to divide the labor movement by creating a rift between professionals during the Allende government as well as prior to that, because the Coup, which was the Central Única, was well known for being a supporter of Allende even before he became president and during his the different candidacies, and as when he was Minister of Health as well. And so this level of involvement from the AFL-CIO is something that the U.S. labor movement, as well as the labor movement in general in Chile, needs to be more aware of. Yesterday, the day before yesterday, I was at the book fair, and I got a chance to speak with the mayor of Recoleta, who is a member of the Communist Party, and he has instituted interesting programs having to do with popular low-income pharmacies and open universities and housing and things like that. He's also a candidate for president during the primaries against Boric. And I asked him what role does he believe, what responsibility does he believe that the AFL-CIO has in its role in destabilizing and creating the conditions for the overthrow of the Allende government. He said basically it should be considered criminal because it is a crime against humanity what was done in Chile, and there should be some consequences, and maybe even legal consequences that arise out of that. He said he would be in favor of even suing the U.S. government for this. And I'm a member of the University of Professional and Technical Employees. I'm a rank and file member. I was a former member of the San Francisco Labor Council. And the AFL-CIO also impeded the Labor Council from even passing a resolution in support of Palestine and against apartheid in Israel. They literally sent a letter directly ordering the Labor Council not to pass this resolution, which also goes against independent unionism and against the rank and file, the wishes of rank and file, since my union had passed a resolution against Israeli apartheid and against Israel, which is the apartheid-style trade union that exists in Israel at this time.
Our next speaker is Thomas O'Rourke. Thomas is a AFD teacher and also is a member of LePayo. Welcome, Thomas.
I extend revolutionary greetings and salutations to American unionized workers and the entire American working class. By that I mean workers both across the U.S. as well as across the vast continent we call the Americas, from oil drillers and fishermen and women in Alaska to dock workers and miners in Patagonia, Argentina, and Chile, and all points and working occupations in between. My name is Thomas O'Rourke. I'm a longtime unionist and resident of Washington, D.C., the capital of this imperial republic of the United States, where democracy in the guise of civil liberties, electoral rights, and especially workers' rights remain a figment of a wishful dream that has yet to come close to achievement or fruition. As liberal preacher ML King Jr. noted 50 years ago this past August, America has regularly and consistently written bad checks that can't be cashed for reasons that are obvious to many but rarely acknowledged. Full democratic rights, indivisible and unabridged, constitute a major and continual threat to capitalist property forms, as well as the imperial project of military domination, political hegemony, and private profits. The U.S. and American ruling classes across the continent, in fact, have no use for democracy outside its own class parameters, except to extend this wishful dream as a political sop in order to fool the working classes of the Americas into relative quiet and class peace. It is a one-way street, like many found in this city. A one-way street that doesn't stop cops killing black and brown youth in order to terrorize the poorest sectors of the population, nor does it stay the hands of picket line scabs who are often armed, certainly backed and supported by armed and legal forces of the capitalist state. Cops, prosecutors, judges, and prisons backed ultimately by the military, especially the officer class, which constitute the fundamental layers of capitalist state power. Today marks a double anniversary in the historical memory and legacy of the American capitalist classes. Clearly the 50th year since the murderous, bloody coup d'etat in Chile against a democratically elected socialist coalition government marks a bloody milestone in U.S. imperialist diktat, as well as a national tragedy for the Chilean peoples and a crime against the humanity of the Chilean working class. Many of my comrades here today have spoken quite eloquently about various aspects of this horrific event and various guilty actors who played a vital role in carrying out this crime against the working classes of all the Americas. Whether it was the actual military coup launched across Chile on September 11th, 1973, or the subsequent political witch hunts, assassinations, and disappearances carried out by military and intelligence forces across the Americas in league with capitalist political institutions and, most specific to our focus today, the labor bureaucratic leadership forces that carry the political and economic wastewater for its own capitalist class. In our case, here in the U.S., the American Federation of Labor, Congress of Industrial Organizations, the AFL-CIO. The other anniversary that we in the American working class marks today is September 11th, 2001. It was on that day that hijacked commercial airplanes were employed as massive bombs to attack the World Trade Towers and Pentagon in order to strike blows against the behemoth American empire running rampant across the globe in its post-Cold War heady, intoxicated daydream of imperial hegemonic self-fulfillment. Those terroristic hijacking actions committed a gross crime against the American working class when it brought down the World Trade Towers, full of office, restaurant, and other workers. And this was carried out because the hijackers equated an attack on the working people of the U.S. as an attack against its imperialist American government. This was not true then, and it is not true to this very day. We learned later that many of the hijackers, as well as the planners of the attacks, were fundamentalist Muslims who previously served as armed proxies and cutthroats of American imperialism in its bloody war against the Soviet Union's intervention, invited, by the way, by the government then in power, into a civil war then raging in Afghanistan. We also know about these attacks that our own government has never owned up to its involvement in funding and arming Islamic fundamentalists as long as they were doing the bidding of American imperialist masters. Many recognized these attacks at the time. What? Is it not getting through? Okay. Many recognized these attacks at the time for what they were. Blowback on the American empire. Thank you, Joe. blowback on the American empire by the human detritus it had set in motion to combat Soviet-style communism. But the secrecy around the 9/11-2001 attacks and America's role in them was downplayed by both our government and corporate media. Instead, a chapter out of the old playbook was brought out and implemented, including the violent curtailment of everybody's civil liberties through heightened government surveillance, the destruction of fundamental liberties, including privacy, habeas corpus, and just about every other right or privilege guaranteed in the First, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth, and Eighth Amendments of our Constitution. I believe it must be stated clearly and unequivocally that the post-9/11-2001 American imperialist project, including assassinations, disappearances, renditions, torture, and wholesale military slaughter, is a bipartisan project and thus a coordinated and concerted project of the entire American ruling capitalist class. And of course, it is the regular American taxpayers footing the bill, with high taxes, deficit spending, and government borrowing that will see American workers end up paying the bulk of the tab. This situation is made possible by the betrayal of the interests of humanity and the working classes of the Americas and across the planet by its purported leadership, especially in the leadership suites of the labor bureaucracy that leads the American working class. Almost done. While many of us have pointed out that the AFL-CIO acted secretly in 1973 to set up the Chilean workers and demand accountability, the fundamental betrayal of the AFL-CIO, in mine and the eyes of many militants within the working class, is acceding to the dictates of the American capitalist class by supporting the American government as the product of supposedly democratic processes. That is to say, that the AFL-CIO's allegiance to and heavy participation within the Democratic Party here in the U.S. is a fundamental betrayal of the real interests of the American workers. By tying unionized and non-unionized workers into the trap of capitalist political parties and giving credence to the obvious lie that the Democratic Party is a friend of labor rather than a capitalist wolf wearing an extremely thin and worn sheep's face, the AFL-CIO openly betrays its duty to workers and sides with the American capitalist rulers. Breaking with the Democratic Party, and obviously not going over to the capitalist Republican Party, is a first but necessary step for America's working classes to gain their political independence, which is necessary in order to finally begin to defend its own interests with the full power that a militant and militantly led working class can muster. At that point, and only at that point, I believe, can the American working classes come to recognize the vital steps they need to take to defend themselves and all the oppressed of these continents by seeking to create a workers' government here in the United States. Then maybe we can begin to truly make amends and restitution to the working classes. Then maybe we can begin to truly make amends and restitution to the working classes of Chile, Vietnam, Korea, Russia, China, and the rest of the world where American imperialism has wrought death and destruction. Break with the Democratic Party, create a workers' party that fights for a workers' government. Thank you for your attention.
We're going to be delivering a letter in a few minutes, and our last speaker is Professor Kim Sipes, who is a longtime investigator, researcher, and writer on the AFL-CIO. Welcome, Kim.
Sisters and brothers, the AFL-CIO has been carrying out interventions around the world for over 100 years. They've been carrying out interventions around the world for over 100 years. They have never, although they say they're on the workers' side, in reality, they've been there to support groups that have oppressed workers, have undermined workers' organizations. They have helped overthrow democratically elected governments, such as in in Guatemala in 1954, Brazil in 1964, Chile in 1973, and they were also involved in supporting the coup in Venezuela in 2002. So although they say they're helping workers, in reality, they're undermining any workers or any organizations that are working to undermine the control of the U.S. government. So that basically the way, I think the best way to see it, the way I see it, is that the United States is the homeland of a U.S. empire, and that wherever they've operated to advance the U.S. empire. The AFL-CIO leadership. Now, this is not everybody in the AFL-CIO by any means. It's a small group at the very top that operate anonymously. They've never given an honest report in over 100 years to the members about what they're doing, what countries they're in. So while they have been doing these operations, and including supporting dictatorships like in the Philippines, like in South Korea, like in Indonesia, like in the Congo, they have supported dictatorships around the world. The AFL-CIO thinks the U.S. should run the world, and they're doing everything they can to support it. This is coming from within the labor movement. It's a small group that is operating in the name of American workers, but without their support or their knowledge or whatever. So we've been working for over 40 years trying to bring this to people's attention, saying that this is not what our labor movement should be doing, because what's happened is they've quit supporting the American workers in general, because they're too busy overseas screwing over other workers. So we want them to end that, end all relationships with the U.S. government, and to turn to supporting American workers who need it very much.
We have a letter that we're going to be bringing to the AFL-CIO today on the anniversary of the coup, to Liz Schuler and the AFL-CIO Executive Board. We're going to be going inside and asking that they accept the letter, and also that they answer the letter. They have some questions from workers in this country about what the role has been internationally, the Solidarity Center, and what they did in Chile, and we're going to submit this letter and demand some answers. So thank you for attending this rally. We're going to be going in. We also have a petition which we're submitting to workers all over the world in the United States, demanding that they be held accountable, that they open the books, that they compensate the thousands of workers who were killed as a result of direct action of the AFL-CIO. And also that they stop taking the $75 million from the National Endowment For Democracy. The U.S. government would not be giving them $75 million if they were actually fighting the multinationals that run the world and are exploiting workers. That would stop very quickly. And there's going to be a national strike of the auto workers. And auto workers in Mexico and Canada need to join them. We need direct action of workers all over the world to fight solidarity, to fight union busting, and to fight the policies of Solidarity Center, which are privatization, deregulation, and union busting, where they are involved in. They don't want to fight these governments because they support these U.S.-supported corporate governments. So we're going to take that letter in, and we ask you to join us, and we're going to continue this fight. Join the PIO. Stop government funding. Stop government funding.
I wrote that letter from my heart because I feel deeply that the AFL-CIO has misled and continues to mislead the American working class for more than a century. We heard early on, or yesterday's conference, founder of the American Federation of Labor, Samuel Gompers, whose statue apparently is over at about 11th in Massachusetts. I never went to visit because Samuel Gompers in my book was, though a cigar maker and a craft unionist, also a thorough racist and supporter of the American imperialist project. As far as I know, he was pro the Spanish-American War and everything else his government undertook. Unfortunately, the AFL-CIO, during a period of historic militancy when it incorporated the Congress of Industrial Organizations in the 30s,
has long since shed that veneer. And today, of course, we mark the 50th anniversary of a bloody, horrific military coup d'etat in Chile, with the cahoots of which were the CIA, the U.S. government in various departments, along with the AFL-CIO's international wing. Its name has changed. Today it's called the Solidarity Center. And today, though its image is a little bit more polished, a little less rough around the edges, it's still totally secret, totally non-transparent, and totally unaccountable to its own American working class. That's why I'm here, and I believe strongly that the way the American working class is tied to imperialism is through the agency of the Democratic Party, the so-called friend of labor that takes up every imperialist war, every imperialist and domestic terroristic plot. I won't get into the current ones, but certainly it has voted time and time again to renew the Patriot Act, which was the beginning of a qualitative step in the loss of our civil liberties and rights, privacy, habeas corpus, and various amendments spelled out in the first 10 amendments of our Constitution. So I hope this message gets loud and clear, is heard by the AFL-CIO leadership. I don't believe they'll be very pleased about it, but we're speaking to the American working class, and we are inviting the AFL-CIO to come in and join, but we have no historical reason to believe they will. They never have in the past. In fact, the next time they get politically active, you notice how few people coming out of the building took flyers. They profess apoliticalization until about 6 months before it's time to elect Democrats. And then it's, suddenly funds are available, manpower is delivered to the phone bags, is an ever-growing cynical ploy to continue to fool the American working class. We refuse to go along, and we insist that it stop now.